Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Scheinman, the Bird Conservation Director for Audubon, Arkansas. And welcome to this webinar, Conversation with a Bird Artist. Before we begin, a couple of administrative things. Everybody is on mute to cut down on background noise. If you have any questions for our guest, if you're on Zoom, you can write those in the chat box. And if you are watching us via Facebook Live, you can post your questions in the comment box, and those will be relayed to Daniella. So, Daniella Napolitano, thank you for being with us today. She grew up in Little Rock, but she currently lives and works in Phoenix, Arizona, where it's as hot as an oven instead of being as hot as a dishwasher here in Arkansas. She draws inspiration from nature and ecology. Her art explores the diverse and complex relationships between animals, humans, and the environment. And her current body of work focuses on animals commonly seen throughout the Southeastern and Southwestern U.S. She received her bachelor's in studio art at American University in Washington, D.C., and is currently pursuing her master's in printmaking at Arizona State University in Tempe. Before moving to Arizona, she worked at the Arkansas Arts Center, and her work has been shown in Washington, D.C., Cincinnati, Florence, Italy, and throughout Arkansas. And it's my pleasure to welcome Daniella, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation about art. I would not consider myself to be an artist. I do a little crafting, a little card making, but real art like you do is beyond my talents. So you do drive, well, let's start from the beginning. How did you get started as an artist?
That's a great question. I think this is like, if you ask any artist how they got started, a lot of people I've heard say like, oh, well, I started drawing as a young child, and it's just one of those things, people like notice you're good at it, you want to keep doing it because people like doing things they're good at. And art, much like anything else, it's a skill that you can get better at as you keep drawing. So, you know, as a child, my mom encouraged I have siblings, she encouraged all of us to be creative and have creative outlets. So, you know, I did art classes in school and summer camps. And so, you know, it's just one of those skills that I just kept at it and kept doing it. And eventually it got to the point where that was the only thing I really wanted to do. And that's how I started going to college. I wasn't 100% planning on majoring in art, but by the time I got into school, that's kind of the only thing I wanted to do. So, but yeah.
So, yeah, well, so what kind of media do you prefer to use in your art?
I primarily, in your introduction, it mentioned I'm working towards my MFA in printmaking. So that's kind of a complex media that has a lot of different ways you can do printmaking. It's not just, oh, I do printmaking and there's one way to do it. And some of it gets a little complex, but mostly I do relief printmaking. So if you are at all familiar with print techniques, it's like carving it like a wood block. So you carve into a block. I use linoleum. And so I like to think of it as just making giant stamps. If you are familiar with how rubber stamps work, the grooved places are white and what you put the ink on is black. So everything I carve away is the white of the paper, and what's left is going to be what the ink rolls onto. So that's one thing I do. I also like to dabble a little bit in etching, which is the complete opposite. Everything you make like a line on the copper or zinc, that the ink actually gets into the grooves, and so every line you make is a positive line and not a negative line with relief. So that's kind of more complex, but I also originally my background's in drawing, so basically any dry media, well, I don't know, charcoal, pencils. I do a lot of illustrations with marker. Don't do much painting. So with the exception of a couple of things, mostly drawing and printmaking. So.
Printmaking, do you draw out draw
Yes.
first and then you carve from there.
Yes, everything I do with my prints, I draw it out completely first. Different printmakers work different ways. Some people work a lot from photographs using photographic imagery, like for screen prints or some photo lithography processes. But because my background's in drawing, everything I do starts with the drawing and then ends up how it is.
How long does it normally take you to get a drawing the way you want it, so you're satisfied and just ready for the next step for printmaking?
It depends. Some things just come together really quickly. I've got a solid idea in my head. I've got my references that I'm working from, and I know exactly how I want it to be. So I can draw sometimes directly onto a block of linoleum, get everything on there, all the information on there, and start carving. But sometimes I have to do a lot of thumbnail sketches, a lot of like prep work in like a sketchbook, or just like, scrap pieces of paper until it's exactly how I want it to be. So I can't really, I think I've done a series of prints, like a run of prints in a day, something that and it also depends on the size. You can have very, very small prints or really large ones. So if I was working on a small print, sometimes, yeah, a couple of hours, I can get something down if it's not complicated. But like with anything, it just depends on if I'm happy with it and if I need to rework it.
Do you have any designs you've been sitting on for years, you just haven't felt are ready for prime time?
Yes, so there are a couple of images that I actually do kick around idea. I get these ideas or like vignettes about a composition that I'll kick around, or I'll have a little sketch and I'm not super happy with it. And then I'll come back to it and keep coming back to it because I like the themes and the ideas, but I haven't settled on the imagery yet. So there was one that I had. I was working on a series. I just knew I wanted to do something with invasive species. So I had this idea with, a feral hog and starlings and kudzu. I've sent you that image.
Yeah, I can show that.
Yeah, that I literally had been working on it I had an initial sketch and I had it for, I think 2 or 3 years before I made it into a print, which you'll see here. So that was the final print that I did. The black layer is a lino cut and the color I did as a monotype, but this particular image I was working on, I started with the idea 2 or 3 years before I actually committed it to a print. And it was originally going to be a drawing. I had this idea of making it be like a pen and ink drawing with watercolor. And in the end, I was like, no, this has to be a block print. And I don't know why. I think it's the bold lines. Yeah, so that's one. And then there was one drawing that I finished very recently this summer of grackles around a grill. And that's an idea that I had for several months before I actually got around to drawing it, just because I didn't know exactly how I wanted it to look, but I knew I wanted to do something with them.
Where do you get the idea for grackles on a grill?
A lot of things. So
A quail and a golf ball, for example.
Yeah. So I think I saw a question in the chat that Anne had, was, have I been inspired by birds in Arizona? And the answer is yes, because different from the ones in Arkansas, slight overlap, but great-tailed grackles are everywhere and they're really funny and they just kind of get wherever people are. So in the apartment complex where I was living, they have a pool with like grill areas, and the grackles would always where the food was, as they do. And then I was talking with a researcher at Arizona State who is studying grackles, and she was telling me all about their like dominance displays and how they act during nesting season. And so I just thought it would be really funny to have them all around, all these male grackles around a grill, puffing up, trying to like be, the king of the grill, if you will. Because of just like, I don't know, I kind of had this idea like how people get when they're grilling. It's like can be kind of manly. And so I wanted to have my manly crackles. Yeah, yes. Have the behavioral thing. So that was an idea that I had for a while, and I just didn't know if I wanted it to be a print or a drawing. And so this kind of was I hadn't drawn with colored pencils in a while, and I was at home because of COVID-19, all the studios shut down, and I was like, you know what, I've got to work with what I have. So I took out my colored pencils, my drawing paper, and it went really well. Colors, I got them how I wanted, because they're very, the graphite and the sun. So
yeah, they're very iridescent, so I imagine challenging to get that quite right.
Yes, especially if you're using a medium that's very flat. Block can look like flat and graphic, like a poster. So I kind of I don't like to restrict myself to one medium, because I like to pick whatever I think will fit the subject matter the best.
So we've seen work that has birds in it. Why birds? Why? What inspires you to illustrate birds?
Oh, I just really like them. And that's such a cop, but it's true. I have always been very interested in animals, from a very young age. Watched a lot of Animal Planet, I think. And I, went to ecology camp, to museum camps. And so it was, for a long time when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian, just wanted to be around animals. And so I don't know how it settled on birds for the most part. I make a lot of art with birds, not just birds, but for a while it seemed that was a main subject matter. And I think maybe it's just because they're what you see mostly when you're walking around just in your day-to-day life. And I'm very interested in how animals and humans interact in their day-to-day lives, just the animals you see every day, and not the ones you have to go out into the deep wilderness that you're never gonna really see just living your life. I think birds are the two animals we probably most often, and squirrels. But so those are the types of animals that I'm drawn to, because I see them all the time. And when it's nice out, you can just sit and watch things move around you if you're paying attention. So
do you spend time watching birds with binoculars, especially if you've chosen a subject, you want to illustrate the great-tailed grackles? You then make time to watch them and their behavior and their body language and their movements?
Yeah, so luckily with grackles, you don't have to really get the, oh, sorry, there's someone in the chat. What medium did I use? Grackles, it was my colored pencils. I'll answer that. So for grackles, all you have to do is really sit outside a place where I like to be around water. So around campus, there are gardens and lawns that are periodic, and that's where they like to hang out. I like to hang out where construction workers eat their lunches, come in, and so you don't really have to have binoculars. And I don't really have binoculars. Sometimes I'll go out with a camera that has a decent, not as nice as I'd like it to be, zoom and take pictures of birds that I see on my walks. And I could use that as binoculars instead. I like to document things for later reference. So I work from photographs a lot. As you can imagine, birds move around a lot. And so they're hard to, if you want just a still picture for a final composition, hard to work on from life. Sometimes I do sketch in a sketchbook just to get gestural records of how an act. All final drawings are done from reference pictures. So.
Right. Mm-hmm. And also you illustrate a lot of insects too. Same thing too. You sit down and watch the bees and the wasps.
Yes. Those are almost all done from photographs. I did do a couple of pictures where I worked from dead insect specimens that I have found. But Yeah, those are all from bugs are all from photographs, and most of them are ones that I've taken, like the praying mantises. When I lived in Little Rock, one of my apartments was by a very wooded area, and we had this one huge praying mantis that lived on our porch overhang. And so whenever I'd see her, I'd take pictures because she was just like this gorgeous giant praying mantis that would hang out and stand out from all like the brown wood. I don't know. I have an affinity for animals that no one else likes. I don't know why. I feel like I have to defend them. Like everyone hates wasps, but it's the hill I'll die on because I think they are important to ecosystems. So I'll just be like, you know, I hear you. They sting and they're kind of mean, but they have a purpose, and we have to respect them. And I love them. I don't know why. So
Well, I agree
that's
with you. And in fact, I am the proud owner of the print of the wasps on the left.
yeah. And they're I think they're incredibly beautiful animals. Bugs in general, especially wasps, praying mantises. Spiders especially can be very cute. And so I try to capture what I like about them in my work so that someone who may not like that particular bug might have a little bit more appreciation for it in the end. And so let's see, here's a question. How do you work to transform photographs into your own compositions? I just use a lot of pictures. So rather than I can always tell when someone has like drawn a picture from something they found on Google, because everyone uses just like the first 5 search results. And so I never want it to look like I've directly referenced a photograph unless that's what I'm going for. So I use just like dozens and dozens and dozens of reference photos. If it's a picture that I've taken myself, I don't feel as bad if it's exactly correctly, but a lot of the time, I want to kind of capture my own like feelings about the animal, and so I'll just look at a bunch of pictures, and when I'm sketching, add a little flair. So some of the pictures I do are exaggerated, like the grackles are bigger than they probably would be in comparison to a normal grill, but I didn't want to make them exactly the size they would because you wouldn't be able to see all the details, or just add a bit of drama. So nothing's directly exactly how it is from a picture, because I always want to emphasize something specifically, and I'll take liberties within reason. I like things to be accurate to a point, so that people know that it is rooted in some sort of like scientific truth, but like with a spin on it.
I agree on that too. I am drawn to realistic art, especially I guess because I'm a scientist and into nature and animals. So, but I like a little bit of spin. I don't want a shirt that's just simply a bird on the shirt. I like yours that are a little more artistic. It's it's more of an artsy bird shirt than just a shirt with some birds on it.
Yeah, I mean, even going back historically to John James Audubon's illustrations, he would pose his specimens in like very exaggerated ways to make them look more lifelike, but probably not exactly how they would be. He took liberties.
Yeah, I thought some of his looked a little too contorted.
Yeah, definitely he was a pretty skilled taxidermist and could get his specimens to look a little dramatic. So
yeah, but also a keen observer of nature.
yes.
Like you are. You got to watch them to be able to illustrate them in stillness, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
So the reason that I know you is through working together on a conservation and art project called Drain Smart. And Drain Smart is just that. It's this wonderful combination of public art and conservation, where Audubon, Arkansas Arts Center, and other organizations came together to recruit artists to paint murals on storm drains. and those murals have a message that you shouldn't dump anything down a storm drain because those storm drains go directly to the nearest waterway untreated. You don't want to pollute our waterways because our wildlife depends on that. And so that started in 2015, and you were among our first group of artists to do that. And I will let me show that.
While you're doing that, I will answer Susan's question about compare starlings and grackles. So we have starlings are, of course, like an invasive species, and I think they're funny and beautiful. So we also have them in Arizona because they're everywhere. But the grackles that we see mostly in Arizona are the great-tailed grackles. They have these very long, beautiful tails, and so it's very easy to tell them apart from starlings. I think the common grackles are a little bit similar to starlings, but with starlings they have little speckles that grackles wouldn't have. So that's how I can tell them apart. In Arizona, if they're very clearly different just because of the size and their tails especially.
So. Share that again. Okay, so 2015, this was your entry to Drain Smart. This is in the River Market in Little Rock. So how did you, what motivated you to apply to Drain Smart in the first place?
So 2015, I moved back to Little Rock from DC a couple before, and I was just trying to find more ways to be involved with the arts and the messaging. I was drawn to it because I was like, oh yeah, of course, efforts to help prevent pollution. That's something that was important to me. And that I'd done public art, one sort of semi-public art thing in high school where for my Girl Scout Gold Award project, if you're not familiar, it's kind of like an Eagle Scout project. I did a mural at an elementary school featuring native Arkansas animals. So this is kind of up my alley, and I was like, well, I've done a mural once. This might be fun to apply. And it was kind of on a whim because I didn't really know the program. It was just starting. But I was very excited when I got accepted because, you know, who doesn't want their art where people can see it? And yeah.
How'd you come up with this design?
So I wouldn't say that I'm a distracted driver because I'm a very good driver, but every time I see great blue herons, I do like kind of, if I'm not driving, just immediately look at them. They're very distracting. Because they're so big and they look like dinosaurs. So I wanted to, I just wanted to think of something that would capture people's attention so that they'd actually pay attention to the mural and not throw their trash there. You know, maybe it's so pretty they didn't want to throw something on my painting, but also I just wanted to think of something that was very attention getting that also reflected where it was going to be. So this was on the corner of President Clinton Avenue and Commerce. I want to say it's right in front of Big Whiskey downtown in the River Market. So it's directly like across from the Arkansas River. And you know, the fabulous little trail that goes around there. And I'd seen herons there like when I'd go on walks. And so I just kind of wanted to design that would reflect where their trash would probably be going as a reminder. I added the turtle because I also really love turtles. And I know we see them everywhere. The red-eared slider, they stack, you know, on the river banks. And so yeah, I just kind of wanted to capture what the Arkansas River and Fish Creek too, what it would look like, and hopefully people wouldn't want to disturb the pristine, you know, kind of idealized scene that I painted with their trash, which they didn't do a good job because you can kind of see some cigarette butts in this picture, but you can
yeah, some people are just not going to change, but I hopefully Drain Smart has changed a lot of minds and brought more attention to the issue of water quality in our cities. And then, of course, after that year as an artist, then you went on to join the Drain Smart committee and
Yes.
you be in charge of leading the group to select the artists for each year. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun to see what the artists would bring every year, because every year would be different like designs, different takes on what they wanted to do, and what, you know, the messaging's all the same, but then the application of was different every year. And you know, it was a lot of fun to see what everyone would bring to the table.
It's amazing just how many talented artists there are around here and all the different concepts they come up with. You know, a lot of turtles, a lot of fish, a lot of birds, of course, because that makes sense, but lots of beautiful abstract designs and someone who turned a city block into a countryside with fields and made the street a river. It was just really amazing what artists can do.
Even the ones where it is kind of, yeah, there's me and my sister. Teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. And I had a small drain. Some of the drains in years following this were quite large. So it was really fun to see what the artists did with the spaces given and how they filled up because the designs they submit are drawn on paper and they don't know what drains they're going to get. And so sometimes they'll draw, like my original storm drain drawing was on a square drain, not on a corner. And so you kind of have to adapt your design to whatever storm drain you have. So it was really fun to, you know, see how they would adapt their design to fit their drain. And, you know, it kept, you know, that's part of the rules. It has to keep the same general design ideas, but there's a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah, indeed. So, is there a particular bird that you haven't seen yet in real life that you would like to see?
Yeah, there's
Like to illustrate that you haven't illustrated yet?
okay, so birds that I haven't seen. So most of that I'd really want to see are birds that are like I'd have to travel to see in the wild or see in a zoo. So it would be really neat. Bearded vultures. I would love to see one in person. They look spectacular. And just really, and any bird that like, harpy eagles too.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
They're so big, and you know, it's just one of those, you see the pictures, and it's one of those things where you're like, you can't appreciate how big they are unless you see them in person, I feel like. So I think those two would be spectacular to ever see in person. And then a bird that I haven't illustrated but would like to, let me think. There are a couple. There are more owls that I'd like to incorporate into even owls several years ago. I haven't really done more with them. These really cute small owls, like I think elf owls.
Yeah,
They're
those are the
very
smallest owls, elf owls.
Yes, they're
In
really,
the desert Southwest where you are.
Yes, they're very small. They're very cute, and I haven't come up with a composition I'd like to incorporate them. So a lot of the time, I don't just pick an animal and just draw it straight out. I kind of want to have some sort of loose narrative or some sort of vignette to go with it. So I haven't quite figured out a story for it yet, but
we do have a question. While you were painting your storm drain, did people stop to watch you paint?
Yes, constantly, actually. And I got a lot of questions about, are you allowed to be doing this? So yeah, had a lot of questions. It was really great because it's a busy street. I had a couple of police officers. It was right before Riverfest, was when I was getting a lot of my work done, trying to finish up before then because they were going to have the streets blocked off. So there were a lot of traffic cops going by, and one of them told me that I was working on one of the busiest pedestrian intersections in downtown, maybe the city. So it made sense because every time someone would come by, they'd ask what I was doing, allowed to do it, and great like educational opportunity because I could talk about like the program and Drain Smart and let them know that all the storm drains in the river market go right into the river, so like, don't throw your cups in there. So
yeah, thank you for being an ambassador for the program for the river. We did learn our lesson from that first year. After that, we gave artists, basically business cards they could hand out so people could learn more. Had the website on it. And then also we tried to pick drains that didn't have quite as much traffic.
Yeah.
Actually car traffic too, trucks and cars running over certain street corners. That was not good for the art.
Yeah. No, it did not last long. But for visibility, it was, I think some of the other drains, the drains picked since that first year have all been really great, like visible drains. I think one of the questions people I was painting were like, oh, so like you can come out and like paint my neighborhood. I'm like, well, that's not really the program's an outreach program, so it doesn't do much help if it's like just, far out where no one can see it. So.
Do you have any advice for an aspiring bird artist?
Yeah, just keep, literally, it's so simple, but it's like playing an instrument or doing anything. If you just keep practicing, at it, come more naturally. If you really want to draw from life, just take a small sketchbook and go out and draw things as fast as you can. Sketchbooks are great to begin. That kind of a private thing that you for reference, so there's no pressure to have a perfect, beautiful work after drawing in it. So just keeping as much as you can, draw what interests you. That's another big thing. I only draw what I like at this point, because if you're going to put so much effort into something, it has to be something you really care about. And I think it shows, in the way you put out.
The great bird artist and field guide creator, David Sibley, he encourages beginning birders and all birders to sketch birds as a way to get to learn what they look like, and as a way to document rare birds too. You don't have to be perfect at it, but you just get the impression of the bird. You draw part of a bird. When I teach birding basics to master naturalists in training, I have them draw a bird from a specimen, and it doesn't have to be worthy to hang on the refrigerator or anything, but at least they get looking at the details of a bird and just learning what the field marks are and where they are.
Exactly. And you, I kind of joked, I told someone to be a good artist, sometimes you have to take inspiration from birders, how you observe things, because I found I have the best observational skills of anyone that I've ever spent time with. I think I went on a bird walk with you once, and you could point out in a tree something that I was like, I don't even know how he sees it, Superman. How is this happening? But it's true with art. You need to be able to observe things, and especially if you're working from life, draw what you see and not what you think you see. So you need to pay attention. And that's exactly, if you want to learn more about birds and how they move, just look at what they are and keep looking at them. Bulls have a certain threat about them. Cactus also have very particular purpose. It's a very bird season right now in Arizona. There's a lot of, at my apartment complex, there were turf wars happening between the different birds that live around. So we have some very feisty cactus wrens that live near our apartment. Are really funny to watch. And that's something I like about birds and nature. It's often funnier than people think. People think of nature, art, and painting very serious landscapes, serious, bird illustrations or whatnot. But nature is really funny, and so I like to also capture some of the humor in it.
Very nice. Well, Daniella, thank you so much for taking the time to share your art and your inspiration with us. It's good to see you. I didn't get to say goodbye before you left Arkansas. So hello again and stay in touch. And thank you everybody for tuning in tonight, and tune in next week for more interviews with more bird loving people. Have a good night, everybody.
Having me, Dan. Thanks.